them, because our first guest on the stream today is amazingly talented. She is a platinum-selling violinist, electronic artist, and entertainer. Truly a multifaceted performer. Her videos are so impressive, and one of her most recent music videos, Lose You Now, came out at the top of the year. And this summer, she's about to embark on a 35-day Artemis tour around the country. And not to mention, she's working on so many other projects, including the Upside Fund, which she started in 2020. And she dropped her full-length project, Artemis, in 2019 that went number one on the Billboard Dance and Electronic Albums chart. And I'm so excited to talk about all of that with her today. So chat, please give it up for Lindsey Stirling. Hi, welcome to the stream.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for the applause.
Yes, of course. Thank you for coming on. I'm so happy to have you on here. Like I said in the intro, you work on so many different projects that it's like I am truly genuinely amazed, because even besides the things that I listed, I know that you've co-written a book that was a New York Times bestseller. You've been on Dancing with the Stars, America's Got Talent. You've done so much. I want to dive into everything. So as we start just at the beginning, what do you feel like you've gravitated towards creatively over the course of your life? What things have called to you? What are your favorite things just as a creative person?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I feel like the thing that I think is actually my greatest gift as an artist is storytelling, like being able to take a viewer, a listener on some sort of journey. And I think that's why, like, from a really young age, I loved John Williams. Like, I had his greatest hits, I think it was CD. He's the he's the film composer that wrote the score for Jaws and Harry Potter and Indiana Jones and so many, Star Wars. And I just always thought he was so good at telling a story through instrumental music. And that's kind of the approach that I've taken to like a lot of the music videos that I create. Sometimes I actually think of the music idea first before I even write the song, and I'll, almost like score my own mini film. And so, yeah, that's something I love.
That is really, really cool. I actually do have a lot of very specific questions for you about certain music videos that you've done too. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. But more generally, I want to start by asking you, how differently do you feel like you approach storytelling through music versus through things like dance in a physical way? Like, how do you tell a story through those things? Because a lot of your videos, you're not just playing the violin, you're not just making music, you're also moving too. So how do you feel like you tell a story in that way?
I actually started to dance because I started to write music that I felt required movement. I was thinking about, like, I always wanted to perform this music live. Was a big reason why I wanted to write music. Was the goal was to get on stage in front of people and perform. And I just kind of imagined myself playing this high energy music while standing there. And I was like, I don't see it working like this. I have to learn to move while play. And so it all started out by just being, I wanted to make dramatic movements. And then that kind of evolved into actually teaching myself how to dance, then actually learning from other people how to dance. And so for me, it all does kind of start with the music. The music has to tell the story, but it's kind of like the 2 feet off each other. Because while I'm writing music, I'm thinking about, like, well, how would I move when I play this? Or like, what part of the story does it tell? And sometimes, like I said, I'm thinking of the video idea, and I'll even tell the producer, I was like, I want really big drums, and I want it to sound intense at the beginning, because it's like we're stepping into an arena and people are about to battle. And it makes it more fun for me to write music that way.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I feel like that's where that film composition, like those film scores, really come in handy. Do you feel like that really influenced your own approach to making music? For every song, are you kind of thinking it from a film perspective then?
A lot of times, not every time, but even my most recent album, Artemis, it was very much inspired by a story. And I've never done this particular way before, but it being my 5th studio album, I was like, how can I write differently? Like, how can I be inspired from a different place? And so I wrote a comic book. It's called Artemis, and I was like, do I have one around here? But it was really fun to like develop this world and these characters, and it takes place both in the future and in the past, and it follows the story of kind of the goddess of the moon, and how she brings light to a world that's in darkness. And so it was really fun to have a very in-depth story that inspired the writing for the music. And I would be like, this represents this part of the story. This could be this. And, you know, I don't know, it just makes me feel kind of like the John Williams that I always loved. And I also went to film school. And so I've always loved just that cinematic approach.
That is so cool. And I'm so glad you brought that up too, because I wanted to ask you specifically about the world that you created around Artemis, because I felt like it was so vivid. And I saw a behind the scenes video that you had done like around Artemis, and it was really amazing, like all the different themes and all of the imagery. So I just wanted to find out a little bit more about what inspired the look for it, and what was your process from writing that comic book to putting out the album to now, you know, going on the tour of the same name. That's like a lot of steps, and that's a lot of iterations of one creative idea. So how did you kind of bring that to life?
I actually really loved that this kind of was drawn out over several different, like you called it, iterations, because, you know, it's one thing to, like, I feel like every story or every process has so many layers, and sometimes they get divided up between, you know, different people or different entities, but it was really fun to be a part of every single one of the layers. Like, I came up with the story, and then it evolved as I wrote the music. It helped inform some of the characters by writing the music of, like, this is Artemis's theme. Oh, this is like when she falls in love. Like, you know, it just really inspired each other as I worked on them kind of in tandem. And then, you know, the album was done, but I didn't realize it would take me 2 years to finish the comic book. So I literally just finished it last weekend. It's going, like, the final issue is going to print, which is really exciting for me. And, but you know, it took me 2 years to write the story. So in a way, it kept the album feeling very fresh to me, because once you finish an album, it's kind of almost like it's relieving, but it's also kind of sad to turn over those tracks, because then they're unchanging. You can't tweak them anymore. You can't edit them. You can't change a melody. You can live, but the album is going to be what it's always, it's always going to be frozen there. But by continuing writing the story and working on the comic books, and then being able to put the characters into real life form in music videos, because I did quite a few music videos giving little hints of the story as it unfolded. And it just kept it feeling very fresh and alive. So even though this album now is like a year and a half old, it's like I just finished the comic book. So it feels very fresh as I take it out on tour. And get to, you know, experience it live. Yeah,
that's really, really amazing, because it's a lot to keep track of too, and that's so in depth. It's kind of like you're living in the world too. If you have the comic books and then you have the music that you wrote, and when you talk about, you know, the Artemis tour, and I know it starts July 3rd in Kansas City. That's the first date. Yeah, very, very soon.
Like, soon.
Yeah, sooner than you think. Like 2 weeks. What do you have planned for that tour? Because your videos are already so immersive that I can only imagine. And I've seen, there's one specific performance actually that you did that I want to ask you about later. But I can only imagine, what can fans expect on tour?
You know, I love spectacle. I mean, I think you probably could tell that by just my music videos. I love costumes. I love theatrics. I love props on stage. I think that, like I said, storytelling is kind of what I like to do. And so I really try to bring pieces of that into the show. It's also super energetic, like my dancers and I literally am running stairs every morning to try to just get my cardio up so I can do these performances, you know, full out and be energized. And I wish I could just take you on a tour around my home right now, because there are wigs and costumes and rhinestones, and like, I'm just very involved in all the processes of what I do, like maybe too much, but partly it's because I just love it all. I love the creative process. It's fun for me to like run down to the fabric district and buy bits of material to add to pieces of costumes. And so, yeah, if I gave you a tour of my house right now, you'd see that I'm preparing for tour. Yeah, but yeah, it's going to be so, I think, magical to step on a stage again and give an energizing performance.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And when you're talking about the spectacle of your performance, the one that I wanted to talk about specifically that you did that really stuck out to me was the Home for the Holidays show that you did at the end of last year. And you are, for people in the chat who haven't seen it, you are playing the violin and also being spun around by your hair while you're playing the violin. which was really amazing to watch. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I personally would get so dizzy. But could you just talk me through where that idea came from, how you executed it, just the whole process? Because that was truly amazing.
Yes. Okay. So the idea came from, I went to a Cirque du Soleil show several years ago, and you're not supposed to go to a Cirque du Soleil show and leave saying, I want to do that. You are supposed to leave being like, that's amazing. And like, they are trained professionals. You're
like, this, nope, I'm doing it too.
Yes. For some reason, I saw this girl who did hair hanging, and it is what it sounds like. She had a bun on the top of her head and a carabiner hooked into it. And she was lifted and spun and did this beautiful routine hanging by her hair. And I've always wanted to dabble in acrobatics, but I never could figure out how, because I have both hands occupied by a violin. So I can't do silks, I can't do rings. And I saw this and I thought, well, that doesn't require any hands. I could do that. So here we are in COVID, and I'm stuck at home, quarantined. My tours were all canceled, and I'm trying to think, like, how can I like find some purpose and value? I was planning this Christmas special, and I was trying to think of a way to make it spectacular. I just wanted it to be something that was really great for my fans to watch. I wanted to challenge myself, and so I searched through the internet and I found a hair hanging coach. I found someone who could teach me, which was also really hard to find. Got her tested, flew her to LA. She worked with me for only a week, teaching me how to do this.
That was only a week?
Well, she taught me and then left. And then I would FaceTime her as I like cried hanging by my hair. It was, I will say, it was the hardest thing I have ever experienced, like physically and mentally. Like just, it was terrifying. I was afraid I was going to snap my neck. It's so taxing on your entire body and just so painful. But I just was so determined that I could do it. It was like so much had been taken from everyone that year, and I needed in that moment to prove to myself that I could do hard things. And so I trained for 3 months, and I was able to get it good enough to film that special and do it. And after I unhooked from that performance, I did it. I'm never doing that again. Because originally I wanted it to be a part of my future tours and shows. And that's why I put in so much time, but it was so taxing. Like, respect to the people that do those acrobatic routines and those kind of things, because it's so mentally taxing. I just was like, this is not for me for the rest of my life, but check.
It is. That's truly amazing, because everything that you talked about was everything that I was wondering, like mainly the physicality of it, because how did you, like, what was the most important thing that you learned in being trained to do that? Because I'm wondering about the neck snapping situation. So
that's what I was the most afraid of, because your neck is used to holding up. I think your head is 10 pounds and suddenly it's lifting 100 pounds, like, it's very different. Your neck's not used to that. So I did a lot of neck strengthening, like, but I will say the thing I learned the most is just, I was reminded of resilience, like kind of the grit that it took at the beginning of my career to like go for it, not take no for an answer, and like be irrefutable in the knowledge that I could do this. Like, I often say I like believed my career into existence. Playing the violin and dancing, not a thing. And I was like, I know I can do this. I knew it so strongly that I like made it happen no matter what anyone else told me. And as I was in this, these rehearsal studios, like hanging by my hair every day when I would clip in to practice, because I'd practice 5 times a week, I would just, the thought would come to my mind that this is impossible, because it would hurt so badly. And it felt like your scalp was going to rip off. I was afraid my neck would snap. But I knew that I could do it because I'd done it before.
Yeah.
I know I can do that. Like, the first time was the scariest. And then I realized my scalp isn't going to rip off. My hair's not going to fall out. Okay. And so every time I'd have to remind myself, and I'd have to talk myself through it, and I'd breathe, and I'd be like, you can do this. You can do hard things. Like, it's possible because you've done it before. And so many times in life, we stop at that feeling of, this is impossible. I don't think I can do this. And I remember feeling that the first time I picked up a violin, like, this is impossible. How does anyone do this? And so often that's where we stop. But I've realized that that's not the end of the road. That's actually the first step, is getting over the feeling of this is impossible. And like, whether it's like anything in life, anytime I come to that feeling now, I like literally look back to that hair hanging experience and I'm like, I can do this.
Yes, that is First of all, that is just such an amazing anecdote. And secondly, if I were you and I ever did that hair hanging thing, no one would be able to tell me anything after that. You can use that. You can pull that card out no matter when the situation is. You're like, well,
Right.
I hung
Like,
by
you
my
landed
hair.
on the moon? Well, I hung
Exactly. Have you seen this? Exactly. No, but I also love how you brought up the beginning of your career too, because I wanted to ask you about that. I have to say, I have gone back through and watched almost every video that you've ever done. So I really scrolled. Yes. And I just really loved how, even from the beginning, like, what was it like when you first started gaining traction? Because those early videos that were going viral, that was back when like things didn't really go viral like that, like they do now. Like now things go viral all the time, but back then they weren't really. So what was it like for you when you first started, posting online that you were playing the violin? Like, what was that moment like for you when you were like, oh, I can do this?
Yes. I remember it being a very specific moment. It was when I released my video Crystallize, which was like a dubstep violin thing. It was the first time I'd ever tried dubstep, but I was very inspired by Skrillex, and I loved Skrillex. So I was like, I'm going to try this. And I remember I had covers do well before. Like I had done a Zelda medley that did pretty well.
I'm going to ask you about that.
But I'd never had an original song, like the kind of music I wanted to make. Like I would do covers, originals, originals, and the covers always did well, and the originals always kind of fell flat at first. And when that song exploded, and it was my biggest video ever, it got 1 million views in one day, which at that time for me was insane. And like you said, the way that YouTube worked, it was just, that was a lot at the time, especially. It's a lot now, but I just remember sitting there and realizing, I think my life just changed. Because, suddenly people were seeing me for the artist that I wanted to be. And from that moment on, my originals usually did better than my covers. And that was when everything changed for me. And, and it wasn't like I just started kind of putting videos on YouTube and they just started doing well automatically. Like I had tried so many things leading up to that point. Like I had been on, I had played college showcase shows and like slept in my car after them. I had got onto America's Got Talent and been voted off pretty brutally. I'd done so many things to try to make it. Like I'd ridden a Greyhound bus to Vegas to try to hand out DVDs and resumes. Like, so this wasn't my plan A. And I think that's something that, people only really remember, the YouTube stuff, but no one often sees the place where all the artists, all of us, had that time when we were trying different things and it wasn't working. And so it just is, again, that testament of, you have to believe in yourself so strongly and be like, I got this. I have to believe in myself or this isn't going to happen.
Yeah. And when you talked about, you were doing a lot of covers, but that original song was the moment, when that blew up, that was really the moment for you. What then was your thought process when it came to making your own music? Like, how do you feel like you've evolved since then as an artist and when it comes to making your own original music and putting yourself out there in that way?
Yeah, it was funny when I wrote my first album, and my first original songs, I actually didn't even know how to write music. I had played the violin since I was 6. So I was a musician. I had been trained classically, but I didn't know anything about like, modern music, production, or those like things you learn about how to write a song structure and all that. And so it's interesting that I just kind of went for it. And I think that sometimes the things we, when we don't know the facts, sometimes that can be a little bit of a help. Like I didn't actually realize that what I had set out to do was kind of impossible. And I think that really worked to my betterment. The fact that I was just writing an album, I didn't know how to do it. And I just was like, well, I'm just going to start. I'm just going to do it. I didn't know how hard it was to make it in this industry. And I just was like, I'm going to make it happen. And the fact that I didn't understand all the things that were stacked up against me helped me to just believe in it. And it's almost like now I have to work backwards. Now I know all that's stacked against me, or just against anybody, not me particularly, just the hurdles you have to jump and how hard it is in this business. And I have to almost go back to that Lindsey that started her career blindly and optimistically and be like, you could do this. Like, if I had doubted myself then, I never would have made it. Yeah. And every time I step in the room to write, I have to really be like, go in with that attitude of the girl that didn't know what she was doing and just believe in yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Kind of like bringing that hunger back for yourself.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah, I like that a lot. And I mean, thinking about your songs now and your music videos, they're so incredibly moving. Like, you definitely got to that place and really found your voice as a songwriter. I know, your most recent music video, Lose You Now, it's so, like I said, very moving, very intimate. I know it's very personal for you in terms of the imagery and the message, but I would love to hear more about how that song and that video came together. And I also know that you just released an acoustic version like a few months back too, so I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so that song, Lose You Now, is very, very special to me. It was written about my experience in loss. And, I lost my best friend and my dad to cancer several years ago. That experience really changed me, losing them. And for a while, I was just very depressed. And I kind of accepted that I think that this is the new me. I think that like the rose tinted glasses version of myself and that like happy-go-lucky, energized Lindsey, I was like, I think she's gone. And that was a very sad realization for me to feel like I had to accept. And then I realized that I kind of came back, and I was like, oh my gosh, that wasn't the new me. That was just a phase. That's who I was then. That's what grief and extreme grieving had done to me in a time. And I was still underneath the whole time. And so when I first started writing about my grief, the songs were just so sad. Where Lose You Now is a song about that same exact grief, same exact experience, but it's where I'm at with it now. And now I see it as I can look back on memories of my best friend and my dad, and instead of it causing me just like pain and so much sorrow, I'm able to smile and joyously remember, instead of being like, I'm so angry at what I lost. I'm just like, I'm so grateful for what I had. Oh no, I'm getting emotional. This happens to me. But I just am like overcome with gratitude for the experiences I had and the fact that I had this amazing father and this amazing best friend. And Lose You Now is also about angels. I believe that they are now my guardian angels, and they're guiding me and they're protecting me. And just because we lose someone or something in life doesn't mean that we can't still have a piece of it with us and carry it on. So that's it was supposed to be almost like an optimistic, hopeful view on loss.
Yeah. And I definitely feel like that's a theme in a lot of your work too. But I really appreciate that kind of honesty and vulnerability that you have through a lot of your things. This is what I'm feeling, and this is what I'm going through, and this is how I'm going to put it out for the rest of the world and for the people who follow me. And, I think that people in the chat also really agree with that, and they, really appreciate your honesty in a lot of your music. I would love to know too, how do you feel like you've grown as a songwriter? Because it takes a lot to be vulnerable like that in a song and to put yourself out there. So how do you feel like you've grown in that respect?
Oh man, I feel like I've learned to use my music almost therapeutically for myself. It's a lot easier to try to feel like you're writing for other people. Sometimes it's less vulnerable, and you're like, what would people like to hear? And I feel like my first album, I just was testing sounds. There wasn't really any feeling involved in it. I was just like testing sounds and being like, what sounds fun and what goes together? Because I was discovering my own style. And it's been interesting as I've learned, then it became, people encourage you to try to write a radio hit. And so it's like, well, what would people want to hear? What would do well on the radio? What's the formula? And it was really fun with this most recent album to like just go back to taking all the things I've learned from writing formulas and the way to do it as a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. I now know that stuff, but I'm going to go back and just write what feels good. And I'm going to write for what I feel in myself and write the vulnerability that I have rather than just writing what I think that other people want to hear. And that's suddenly when it rings really true.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think whether it's your music or also your videos, I feel like you really have stuck to, this is what you do well, and this is what you feel, and this is what you want to highlight, and this is also what your fans like. And it's you through and through, because as I said, I did go through all your videos, so I know that it's you through and through. But I also, one thing I love about the videos that you've put out, both in terms of your recent music video and older ones, I like how you tie in all of these different themes to your videos. I know you had the Zelda one, which was really, really cool, by the way, and I want to hear more about that. It was just very fun, and I feel like you also really get into character. This wasn't even the point of the main question, but now out of curiosity, I would love to just hear about making that music video and also how you get into character. Because I know you did the Zelda one. You also had a Beauty and the Beast themed video, which was really fun. But I would just love to hear about how you get into character and also how you think of, okay, I want to make a video that's around this. But then, like you said, it's very physical while you're playing. So it's very just interactive and immersive for people watching.
Yeah. Well, I love, like I mentioned earlier, I went to film school and I remember studying all about storytelling and about character development. And so, it's funny how all of that stuff I think is just kind of ingrained into my mind. And before I film a music video, I'm always thinking like, what is the character? What is the intention of this? Like, am I Link dancing through the forest with elf ears? And do I want it to be serious or do I want it to be fun and like feel light? And it's always very much informed by the music. But even like I'm filming a music video this weekend and I'm very much thinking like, I was actually looking in the mirror yesterday and practicing like, how would this character be? This like holier than thou character that's like above it all, but like not take myself too seriously. So it's still comical. And it is almost like a little bit of like how actors think, I think. But I really do try to get into character, and I love music videos. It's probably one of my favorite parts of the process, because I come up with the treatments. I like, plan them out, and like I said, I have some costume bits around the house and for this video, and was styling wigs yesterday for it. And then I edit them, so they're like my babies. I fully concept, plan, help costume, and I edit. And so I think that's why I'm able to get into the character so much, because I'm an editor, I see how I'm going to edit it as we're filming it. And then because I developed all the costumes, it's like I've been thinking about it for a while.
Yeah, that is so interesting to hear, because a lot of the videos that I was watching of yours, there's all of these there's a lot of attention to detail, both in terms of the characters and also how the music video flows. But I also had the thought, I was like, wow, I wonder how much she has to talk to whoever edits this to make sure that they do it in the way that she wants, because it feels like it really comes together from start to finish. But that would make a lot of sense, because they really seem cohesive in the process. What's been your favorite video that you've done so far? I know that's a very big one of your favorites. One of your favorites.
One of my favorites. I mean, I've loved some of the ones I've done for the Artemis story, because it's been so fun to take a story that I've written and bring it to life. So I loved the Till the Light Goes Out one that just recently came out. Like, it felt like we were on a battle scene. We had a stunt choreographer there to like teach me and my dancers how to do these battle scenes. It was really fun. And then other than like the Artemis ones, there's this one I filmed in a like old Western town, and it was supposed to be like I was like, what if there was like a town or like a reality where people battle with music? And so like a guitar slinging outlaw comes to try to take over my town, and like we battle like a duel in the streets, but with violin versus guitar. And I don't know, that's one of my favorites ever.
I love that. I also wanted to ask you too, how do you find inspiration for these new videos or songs or treatments? Because they're just kind of never ending, and they're all so different and unique, which I really appreciate.
Thank you so much. It is funny because I remember when I first started and I was making all these different videos, I like had this moment where I thought, I'm going to run out of ideas. How long? This was like in the first year of doing what I do. I've now been doing this, making videos for 10 years on YouTube. And I remember thinking, how long can I think of different concepts for dancing around and playing a violin? Like, I'm going to run out. But like, I actually just recently read a book. I really like self-help books or self-improvement books. They fascinate me, and I love learning about the mind. But I was reading this book, and he was talking about scarcity. I think it was called Letting Go was the book, but he was talking about the concept of scarcity and how there's different mindsets. Either you live in a place where everything is scarce and everything's a limited resource, and gosh, you bet like it's going to run out, and people live in that mindset, or you live in a mindset of an abundance where that there are limitless ideas. There is limitless money in the world. There's limitless like of everything. And not to say that makes like you don't want to be a wasteful person, but if you think in that, like you're not holding on to things, and that way you start to attract more things.
Yeah.
So I really try to live in a mindset of abundance in a lot of areas of life, like with time, with resources with, of just, it's okay. More ideas will come. And by you so living like that, it's like you start to attract the things that you used to be holding on to.
That is very true.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes that makes perfect sense to me. I totally get that. Just kind of being like, okay. And then whatever's supposed to come to you will come to you when it is time for it to come to you. And then you don't have to be stressed about it.
Yes. Not just like holding on. Like, it's like people say in relationships when you are like holding on to someone so tight, like you're afraid, they're leaving you or they're not interested. They're going to like want to slip away. But if you just like let it be, people gravitate to you.
Exactly. Just kind
of
let it go.
Same with creativity, same with ideas, same with so I'm really trying to get better at living my life from that setting of just like letting go of holding on to everything, and it will be.
Yeah.
Ideas will come.
I really like that. How do you feel, and that's really insightful, and I think really indicative of the fact that you've been doing this and really honed in and, practiced your craft and you're an expert at it. How do you feel like you as an artist have evolved over the course of your career so far? When you look back and you think about whether it's how you approach creativity or how you feel as a person or the art that you make, how do you feel like you've changed?
Ooh, I mean, to be honest, like part of me is like, have I changed very much? I mean, I know that as a person, I have definitely changed a ton. As a person, I have gotten so much deeper with just the way I view myself, the things I've been through. And I think that's what's kept me sane in this industry. And so as a person, I've changed a ton. To be honest, as an artist, I really don't think I've changed very much. Like I put out on my Instagram and my TikTok recently a video of me and my best friends when we were 15 and we were filming a music video. And it's so funny that I'm like, I was always the one that was like setting up the camera and directing the music video and planning what we wore. And I would, I'd edit them. And, and also, mind you, this was back in the day before like editing software was a thing. And so I would really work hard on these music videos. And it's just funny that my friends still joke with me that like, Lindsey still does the exact same thing that we did in high school. And she does it with the same intensity and intention. It's just now she has the resources to do it in a really good way. So like, to be honest, of course I have goals and dreams and I keep expanding into new areas, but I'm kind of the same exact artist that I was when I was making Avril Lavigne cover music videos when I was 15.
I love that though. I love that because it's like, that's how you really, really know you've honed in on your craft because you truly had no idea where you were going to go. And it's just something that you genuinely enjoyed and that you love to do. And it reflects itself in the music videos, which is great.
Well, thank you.
How do you, what can fans expect? Like, do you have any plans for, well, obviously you're going on tour, but in terms of things that you want to put out next, what do you have planned for the rest of 2021? Oh my gosh, we're halfway through, but for the rest of 2021, that's crazy. I just thought of it while I was sitting here saying that sentence. Ooh.
Isn't that insane? I know. I'm so excited to go out on tour and I am starting to write again. I usually have to wait until I feel ready. So people have been plugging me for a while, like, are you ready to write? And it's always been, I'm not ready yet. All of last year, I was like, I'm not inspired. I'm not going to waste anybody's time, but I'm ready again. And so now I'm honing in. I am trying to find the next direction because I really, whatever I put out, I'm ready for it to be very different. I've kind of done several albums that all have that same kind of a vibe and like the sound I've created, and it's time to switch it up. And so I'm kind of excited / terrified of that. But whether it's like a rock and roll album, whether I lean more into hip hop, like I'm not sure. I'm just in this phase right now of really experimenting. And so we will see.
Yeah. And I'm excited to see what you come out with next too. And I'm so excited for you to be able to go on tour too. How do you feel about that? We had this whole situation over the last year and a half. So how does it feel to be able to finally go back on tour in 2 weeks?
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. Like, I just can't wait to step on a stage and like look into the eyes of my fans. That's always been such a special experience to like feel that connection from stage. There's nothing like it. And I can't even explain. It makes me love people so much when I'm up on stage and having this connection with them. But I will say I'm also quite nervous. Like, I always get nervous before tours and before shows. I'm just kind of like a maybe very anxious person. And, so I've been practicing a lot, and it's, there's no way to fully prepare for the feeling though of performing. Like I can practice the violin, I can practice the choreography, I can have it locked, but there's a very different experience. You have to practice performing and being on stage. And so it's been, since Christmas of 2019. So it's going to be new. It's going to be exciting. I'm nervous, but I'm working my butt off to make sure I am as prepared as I possibly can be.
I can imagine. I'm so excited for you and for all of your fans too. And thank you again so much for joining us. Do you have, before you leave, you've dropped so many nice gems. I don't know if you even realize over the course of this interview. Do you have anything you'd like to say to your fans and the people watching at home? I think they've been really enjoying this conversation. So if you have any last words for them or anything to plug before you head out.
Ooh, anything to plug before I head out? I just feel like this has been a year of so many ups and downs for so many people, and it's been hard. Some people have learned so much about themselves, and it's interesting how sometimes I just keep learning over and over again that sometimes like plan A isn't the right plan. Sometimes plan B isn't the right plan. And again, with last year, I learned that maybe I really needed that. So, this time to reflect and learn. So wherever you're at, in that understanding of yourself, I just hope you know that like life works out. It all works out. And as long as we just keep moving along the plan and walking and following whatever life throws at us, somehow, even through grief and loss and everything I've learned along the way, it always works out somehow. And so whatever you're going through, you're going to be okay. I promise.
I like that. Thank you so much. That is such a nice message. Well, Lindsey, thank you again so much for joining us on stream. This has truly been great, and we would love to have you back anytime.
Awesome. Thank you, Tia.
Yeah, of course. Have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. You too.
Bye.